A controversial return. Former Democratic Republic of Congo President Joseph Kabila is back home after a self-imposed exile. The government accuses Kabila of backing the M23 rebels who've seized large areas in eastern DRC. So what does Kabila's return mean for the fragile security situation there? This is Inside Story. Hello, welcome to the program. I'm Adrian Finighan. The Democratic Republic of Congo is facing one of the world's largest displacement and humanitarian crises. Instability and violence have killed at least 7,000 people and forced millions to flee their homes since the start of this year. Rwandan-backed M23 rebels have taken large areas in the east, including the city of Goma, the capital of North Kivu province. And there are fears the tense and fragile security situation could worsen after former President Joseph Kabila returned from exile. Kabila says he returned to DRC to, quote, participate in peace efforts. But President Felix Tshisekedi's government accuses him of backing M23. So, before we get to our guests, let's just remind ourselves of who Joseph Kabila is. Kabila led the DRC from 2001 to 2019, taking office at the age of 29. He became president after his father, the former president, Laurent Kabila, was assassinated. Joseph Kabila extended his mandate by delaying elections for 2 years after his term ended in 2017. He wanted to hold a referendum to allow himself a third term. In 2018, Kabila formed a power-sharing deal with the current DRC President Felix Tshisekedi, but the president accused him of blocking reforms. Joseph Kabila left the country in 2023 for exile in South Africa and other countries. Well, as we mentioned, Kabila has now returned to the DRC, saying it's where he's needed the most because of the fighting there. A month ago, he warned there's a, quote, risk of political turmoil anywhere in the country. He accused President Tshisekedi of being the root cause. This is what he had to say.
The problem is President Felix. The solution is President Felix. Now, how do you understand that? How do you turn that left and right? Up to you. But critical decisions have to be made. And in critical times, you have to make critical decisions. And these are critical times for the Congo. But in as far as we are concerned, well, like I said, we intend to be very much involved in everything that's happening, especially in as far as peace is concerned.
Well, Kabila's controversial return has led to a number of questions, and we'll put some of those to our guests in just a moment. But first, Al Jazeera's Alain Wekani has this update from the eastern Congolese city of Goma.
In the town of Goma here, opinions still divided around the announcement made by the surrounding of the former President Joseph Kabila on his return in the country. He announced that he arrived in Goma here for bringing solution to what has been going on here. The country is going through a security situation, but people also know that Kabila, as a former president, has some part of responsibility in what happened here, but they also believing that for the time being, Kabila has a solution for what is going on. This is why the opinion are still waiting to know what exactly Kabila is here for.
We can't know exactly if Kabila will be able to bring a solution to what is going on for now, but we need to hear him first on his real motivation. For sure, he can do something.
First of all, Kabila is a former president, and in his time, he worked very hard for peace in this country. Remember, he united the country and people during the transition period with 4 different vice presidents.
I believe that the presence of Joseph Kabila will bring more good solutions for the country because Kabila is a man of peace.
In the political environment, this arrival announcement has also raised a debate, and many people are right now, and other analysts are believing that this can worsening the situation and also can put Joseph Kabila people in danger in Kinshasa, because right now, for example, the political party of Joseph Kabila has been suspended by the Minister of Justice, and also different of other properties of the former president is under the threat in Kinshasa. And then people are questioning whether this will not be another level of escalation right now in the country, but others are still believing that this can be also a beginning of a solution to this ongoing situation in the country. Allen Waikani, Al Jazeera, Goma for Inside Story.
Let's bring in our guests. From Accra, we're joined by Fidel Amakye Owusu, Chief Executive of the security consultancy DevSec Analytics Africa. From Kampala, we're joined by Andrew Mwenda, journalist and editor of The Independent. That's a current affairs news magazine. And from London, we're joined by Alex Vines, director of the Africa programme at Chatham House. A warm welcome to you all. Fidel, let's start with you. Why did Kabila choose to go to the rebel-held city of Goma upon his return from self-imposed exile?
Thank you very much for the opportunity. Firstly, the government in Kinshasa has always accused Mr. Kabila of supporting the rebels, that is the M23 and the Congo River Alliance, in their effort to take control of the East and perhaps move towards Kinshasa. Now, these accusations have sometimes been denied by the opposition and Mr. Kabila himself. However, Mr. Kabila obviously has that kind of support or that kind of cooperation with the M23, and that is the main reason why he would choose Goma over Kinshasa. In recent days, security forces or military intelligence have searched his residence in Kinshasa and other places that he have, other properties he has in the capital. So Kinshasa was obviously not a place to go, and therefore London or trying to get to the country by going through Goma was the only way that was convenient for his return from the self-imposed exile he had embarked on in South Africa.
Andrew, what do you make of that? He's been accused of supporting the rebels in the east of the country. What are his links to those rebels and to Rwanda, which has been accused of supporting them?
Well, I don't think, actually, from my knowledge, Kabila has not had close ties with M23, but he has been mobilizing a series of Congolese politicians, businessmen, religious leaders, civil society leaders, to initiate a constitutional conversation in Kinshasa that would facilitate a dialogue whereby Congolese can rewrite the constitution, whereby they devolve power from Kinshasa to the different provinces of the country. Congo is a vast country with a very small population relative to the size of the land, with the dense forests and swamps, which makes broadcasting power from Kinshasa extremely difficult. And one of the reasons why it has been almost impossible for the Congolese state to stabilize the East is because Kinshasa is about 2,000 kilometers away from Goma and the other eastern regions. And therefore, it's difficult, given that they don't have roads or rail links to the East, for Kinshasa to exercise effective control over the eastern territories. Now, from my knowledge, Kabila has been consulting with the leaders in the East African region, in the Southern African region, and also consulting different players inside DRC in order to facilitate this constitutional debate in DRC that can actually lead to the improvement of governance in the country and building of a more effective state.
Alex, what do you make of all of this? How destabilizing is Kabila's presence in the east of the country right now?
So I would agree with most of what Andrew had said, although I do think that Joseph Kabila Jr. maybe sees political opportunities here and ambition even to come back as a president again in the DRC longer term. He's been out of the country since 2023, but as Andrew was referring to, he's been on maneuvers recently. So he's been to Namibia, he's been to Uganda, he's been to Rwanda. He's talked to other Congolese politicians that are outside the country at the moment. Mr. Kadumpi is one example of that. And so he sees that there are doubts emerging, particularly in Kinshasa, over the longevity of Mr. Tshisekedi as president, particularly also because Mr. Tshisekedi, the president of the DRC, seems to have been hoping to have changed the constitution, maybe run for an additional term. That's now all very much challenged by the M23 incursions and progress in eastern Congo. And so he has come to Goma. I think I would agree that he doesn't have close connections with M23 AFC, but he's looking at an opportunity here of someone that may be able to bridge some of the difficulties that have emerged with the M23 AFC backed by Rwanda, and so sees this as a moment of opportunity.
Alex, you say that he's perhaps looking at another opportunity to be president again. Under the country's current constitution, is he eligible to do that?
Well, no, but he can see an opportunity here if there is a reforming of a constitution and turning the clock back to zero, that this might have a pathway. I'm not sure he's going to be successful in this, but he clearly is ambitious. He's got bored of staying around in Johannesburg for a couple of years, writing a thesis at the University of Johannesburg, and has clearly been seduced by certain people to re-engage into Congolese politics in the way that he has. And so this is his return now, having consulted in the region and more broadly.
Fidel, President Tshisekedi last year accused Kabila of preparing an insurrection. Is there any evidence to suggest that his suspicions might be correct?
Yes, and so like the other panelists have said, that there is always the issue of the political aspect of things. In fact, when President Tshisekedi gives signal that he's likely to touch the constitution of the DRC, it spooked so many politicians, including Joseph Kabila. But then there is always the environment to take advantage of, and that environment was the rebellion that was taking place in the east. So I believe strongly that Mr. Kabila is not oblivious to contact with the rebels. I think that he has it, because you cannot be in Goma where the rebels have a strong hold without that communication. So there's definitely the link. Also, I think Mr. Kabila does not want to miss out on the new interest, global interest in the DRC. For instance, the mineral for security deal that the US is about to sign or is likely to sign with the country. He doesn't want to miss out on that, because then he's seen as a prominent opposition figure. And if anything that has to do with the DRC must go forward, the opposition must be involved. Again, he also sees a possible peace through the Doha process or the Doha talks, and therefore he doesn't want to miss out on it. So being in Johannesburg while all these things are happening looks like kind of a withdrawal symptom of power. He wants to be part of the system. He feels that he was supposed to have done this, or he was supposed to be in charge when this is happening, and that is not the case. And currently he wants to be part of it, and that is why he is back in town.
Andrew, how do the people of the DRC feel about Kabila? How much support does he have? Would people want him back?
Actually, Kabila is a person with considerable political weight in Congo, in the wider Congo. If I was to imagine a politician in the DRC who can rally different forces within the society of Congo around an agenda for a constitutional conference, I think that Kabila would be that person. The second advantage Kabila has, having been a former president, he has greater clout and a higher profile to reach out to Congolese neighbors in East Africa and Central Africa, with whom he has had contacts for many years, more than 2 decades of contact, to reach out to them so that they can support an internal Congolese constitutional process. Now, whether that process can lead to him becoming president is right now not on the cards, in large part because remember that Kabila was fighting the M23 when he was president. He signed a peace agreement with them, then breached it, just like Tshisekedi has done. But ultimately, Kabila, from my knowledge of the discussions he has had, both with Congolese politicians and with East African leaders, is that they see him as a stabilizing force. That the only way you can resolve the problems of Congo is through dialogue. It cannot be through war. The East African and Southern African leaders have impressed this upon Tshisekedi over the last 4 years, telling him that you cannot resolve the issues of conflict in DRC militarily. It's better to have a peaceful dialogue. Now a consensus has emerged both in the region and among key players in Congo who are fronting Kabila that an enduring, lasting solution for the crisis in Congo must be devolution of power to the different provinces so that they can handle the internal security of the provinces at a local level. Kinshasa cannot exercise effective security control over eastern regions because they are distant and they don't have, as I said earlier, infrastructure links. But if you can allow the provinces of North Kivu, South Kivu, Ituri, Isiro, and all these other equatorial provinces to be self-governing and to manage the internal security at a local level, it will be a much more effective way of controlling the more than 120 rebel groups that dominate the politics of Congo. The other thing is that if you have these regions and provinces able to have security, then the Congolese state in Kinshasa can be responsible for external security, that is external defense. But internal security must be controlled at a local level. And I think that if Kabila becomes a leader of that kind of movement for a constitutional dialogue, he will be able to attract the support of many Congolese people in the church, in the churches, in the business community, in the professions, in civil society, but also even attract the support of regional leaders who are important in this discussion.
Alex, searches have been carried out at some of the Kabila family's properties in recent days. His political party has been suspended. They used to be allies. What's behind the enmity and mistrust between Kabila and his predecessor right now?
Yeah, I mean, you're right that the Kabila's party, the PPRD, has been suspended. That's new news, breaking news. It's not surprising. President Tshisekedi is clearly very nervous of Kabila Jr. re-entering the political arena. He is feeling a lot more vulnerable. The M23 progress in Eastern Congo has weakened him, and he is under pressure to both moderate and have dialogue from those that back him in the Kinshasa elite, who previously had backed Kabila Jr. I mean, presidents, in my view, are decided really around politics in Kinshasa. They do have kind of regional reach, but there's a group in Kinshasa that are particularly influential. And so we'll see where this draws out. I think one of the reasons that President Tshisekedi has reached out as robustly as he has to the United States for a minerals deal is to shore himself up and get additional protection also, as well as getting increased pressure then on Rwanda to reduce its support on M23 and at the very least freeze M23 military progress in Eastern Congo. My view is M23 is very tightly linked to Rwanda, and the Congo River Alliance is a bit of a facade that it really is about Rwanda and it is about M23. And so the one other point I'd like to make is that the timing of all of this, I think, is that we are about to enter a new round of negotiations. There are now 5 African mediators put in place. The Luanda and Nairobi peace processes have been brought together. And again, as Andrew had mentioned, and the other speaker, that there is now real focus on devolution and working out some of the root causes of the Congo. And that's right. I mean, you'll only get sustainable peace by doing that in Congo. An elite bargain between President Tshisekedi and, say, President Paul Kagame of Rwanda is not going to resolve the Congo crisis.
Andrew, Fidel, picking up on what Alex was saying this about the timing, what does Kabila's return from exile mean for the Qatar peace talks between the government and the M23?
Yeah, so whether it's returned, and then when he returned, he did not go to any other place than the Goma. Now, what this means is that it's potentially destructive, because then if Mr. Kabila wants constitutional talks, it's not when tensions are high. Currently, even though the talks are going on in Doha, there was a Lendu pro-government forces are clashing with M23 in the Masisi district, Kabari in South Kivu, and Kaheri in South Kivu district. They are still clashing. From time to time, there are skirmishes, and it's resulting in some death. That is already threatening the peace talks. So his coming in and the government disagreeing with that move could potentially disrupt the talks in Doha. Well, Qatar has that kind of carrots, that or the credibility to mediate the conflict, and Turkey is backing it. However, much of what shapes the conflict is on the ground, and so his movement to back to the DRC could be destructive.
Andrew, are President Tshisekedi and his government competent? For anyone who's not familiar with what's going on in the DRC right now, are his critics in Kabila's party correct when they call him an apprentice or a novice, or is that just political rhetoric? Is the country any better off now under Tshisekedi than it was under Kabila and his father before him?
Well, I would not like to comment on the individual competencies of the leaders, in large part because there is, I think, a way politics or power is organized, exercised, and reproduced in Kinshasa that tends to baffle us. Many times we think leaders in Kinshasa are making irrational decisions, but I'm beginning to think that there is a rational basis to their madness. Because even when Kabila was president, he failed to negotiate an enduring or a lasting peace agreement with M23 and other rebel groups. So therefore, just beyond Tshisekedi, I think the discussion should not be about these individuals. It should be, how do we restructure the politics of Congo that can facilitate a resolution of the conflict? Now, let me come to Kabila going to Goma. Because if Kabila entered any part of Congo under the control of Kinshasa, he would have been arrested. So it is inevitable that if he had to go back home, he had to go through Goma. The second, we need to see that there is a link between the desire for political dialogue and the military confrontation between M23 and the government of Kinshasa. The military successes of the M23 have significantly weakened the grip on power by Tshisekedi, and therefore he cannot afford to be belligerent. He would have to, I think the circumstances on the ground demand that he seeks a peaceful resolution to this conflict. I am aware, by the way, that when he met with the East African leaders and also met with the SADC leaders, they told him two things. One, that the M23 has legitimate grievances and legitimate demands, and that he must seek a peaceful resolution of that conflict. But it's very difficult to stop conflicts when they start. What can be achieved in Congo right now is to drive two processes. The political process which Kabila wants to lead, which is a constitutional dialogue to devolve power to the regions, and a military struggle. And that military struggle aids the political negotiations, because the more Tshisekedi gets weakened, the more he is inclined to pursue a peaceful resolution. When he recognizes that the military belligerents will not pay dividends, he's likely to accept talks. And without a military threat, he will not go to the talks. So the two processes are self-reinforcing. The third part is the Americans. You see, from what I know from the Trump administration, a mineral deal for Congo is much more difficult for the United States. One, because the government of Donald Trump does not want to send military troops abroad. And a lot of the minerals that are being contested over, especially the rare earth minerals they're looking for, are in eastern regions, which are controlled by M23. So the question would be, is the United States going to put boots on the ground for it to be able to access these minerals? So the US government is aware that any agreement they sign with Tshisekedi or with Kinshasa, without the consent of other players, will be null and void, because it cannot be enforced without US military presence. And I don't think Washington, D.C. has appetite for renewed military deployments, especially in the jungles of Congo.
Alex, picking up on what Andrew was saying there, what's it going to take to bring lasting peace to the DRC? And is Kabila's presence in the country right now going to help or hinder that?
Yeah, I mean, both Fidel and Andrew have alluded to the kind of the process of having constitutional talks and kind of reimagining the DRC, because it isn't functioning at all as a state at the moment, and it's being pulled in different directions by neighboring countries that have interests in it also, you know, be they Rwanda or Uganda or to the south, Angola and so on. And then, as Andrew mentioned, you've got international players all with their interests, the United States. I think a reason that Qatar has been able to play a role is it's got interests, including economic ones, on both sides of the Eastern Congo border, both in Rwanda and in the DRC. So it will need the pressure of conflict. That definitely has moderated the Tshisekedi administration's appetite to try and achieve peace through war, if that's the way to put it.
Alex,
what has surprised us all is how successful M23 has been. I never imagined that Goma and Bukavu would fall as quickly as they have to the rebels.
All right, Alex, we're almost out of time. One more question. How dangerous a moment is this right now for the DRC with Kabila being back? Could the conflict escalate further and worsen that already dire humanitarian situation? Or do you think this is the beginning of the end, that things will actually improve due to his presence now?
I think that things can improve. I mean, you're right that the humanitarian crisis is dire. 7 million displaced, 3,000 dead in this renewed conflict. The red line for me is if the M23 rebels move towards Kisangani and were to capture that would really escalate things very dramatically. I have a feeling that we're maybe rowing back from that now and going into a cycle of negotiation, both the Doha process, but also the Africa-led one by 5 African mediators and then teams looking at the pillars of underlying crisis in Congo and how to resolve them. So how do you reconstitute the Congolese state, I think, is what they're looking at.
Gentlemen, there, we're going to have to end it. Many thanks indeed for taking part in the programme today. It's been really good to talk to you. Fidel, Amakye, Owusu, Andrew Mwenda and Alex Vines. And thank you for watching. You can see the programme again at any time by going to the website at aljazeera.com. For further discussion, join us on our Facebook page at facebook.com/AJ Inside Story. And of course, you can join the conversation on X. Our handle there at AJ Inside Story. From me, Adrian Finighan, and the team here in Doha. We'll see you again. Bye for now.
Make sure to subscribe to our channel to get the latest news from Al Jazeera.